Okay, so I think we are live. And thank you so much for joining us here to discuss disability innovation for financial resilience in Pakistan. And so just as a brief introduction before we get into the real important part of this session, which is to hear from our excellent speakers, I'll do a quick intro. So the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, so the CRPD, ratified by 193 states globally, requires that state parties take all appropriate and effective measures to ensure the equal right of persons with disabilities to own or inherit property, control their own financial affairs, and have equal access to bank loans, mortgages, and other forms of financial credit. However, what we do know is that globally, people with disabilities, so 1 in 6 of us, are more likely to be unbanked and financially excluded due to limited finances, low financial literacy, discrimination, stigma, inaccessible infrastructure, products, services, channels, touch points. So there's a lot of work to do. And in Pakistan, just 21% of adults and only 13% of women have bank accounts. Data on people with disabilities is limited, yet efforts to improve the financial inclusion are gaining momentum, and particularly so in Pakistan, where we find banks, regulators, tech innovators, and organizations of persons with disabilities working together to improve access. And I'm so delighted to be in conversation with leaders from this ecosystem to share their insights and advice and unique experiences with global audiences. So I'm delighted to be joined here by Arhum Ishtiaq, who works at the intersection of AI, accessibility, creating technologies that make inclusion possible at scale. He is the co-founder and CTO of Connect Here, South Asia's largest assistive tech enterprise for the deaf, where he is leading the development of a global AI platform for automated sign language messaging, enabling governments, humanitarian organizations, banks, and hospitals to deliver vital information in a language millions rely on. I'm also delighted to be joined here today by Omair Ahmad, who is the CEO of NOWPDP, a non-profit organization with a mission for a more inclusive society and empowerment of all persons within. Omair is a social entrepreneur, organizational development specialist, and capacity builder with 20 years of experience leading global strategic initiatives across the USA, South Asia, the Philippines, and the UK. He is the founder of the Shamil Initiative, a social enterprise dedicated to the economic and social empowerment for the disenfranchised. And he has worked in both the development and corporate and financial services sectors, focusing on financial inclusion, welfare, and regulatory frameworks. And so to get us started today, I want to start with a question for Omair. What barriers to financial resilience do people with disabilities face across Pakistan? And what are the nuances, for example, women with disabilities as well? Thank you.
Well, thank you for the very kind introduction, Pollyanna. I think it's wonderful to hear my last name pronounced with such clarity. So thank you for doing that. It's lovely to be part of this panel. We're very happy to be joining here. Our 17 years of work sort of just showed us a lot of things that can happen in this ecosystem that has not happened and what we can potentially achieve. Just to get specifically to your question, I think when we look at the ecosystem of exclusion, as we look at it in a holistic manner, there are about 6 or 7 elements that are extremely important for us to consider when we think about persons with disabilities, particularly in Pakistan. To start off, first and foremost thing is persons with disabilities are generally unaware of their rights and what laws are enshrined, in the country for them to be included as part of the fabric. So that's number one. There are very, very little information that is available for persons with disabilities or the family members. Secondly, the population and the census does not recognize a lot of persons with disabilities because there have been measures that have not been put in place that would count the population of the so-called people with disabilities across the spectrum. So as a result of that, the data does not reflect the scale of the issue, and policymakers tend to not look at it as seriously as they should. Then when you think about the third step, after laws and when you look at the data, the third thing is mobility, both in terms of product accessibility as well as leaving their homes. Public transportation, products and services, as Arhum, I'm sure, will talk about as well, continue to be inaccessible for persons with disabilities when we talk about financial inclusion, bank account openings, lack of sign language. So you have lack of information, lack of data, then you have a lack of mobility that starts off the thing, and that leads to 4 areas that are, or 3 areas that are devoid of persons with disabilities. You don't see much participation in education, or in early education or higher secondary education for people with disabilities. Almost single digit is the participation rate by some estimates. Skills development is not market relevant. I think that's another problem that we face. We teach persons with disabilities to train them on a lot of skills, but are they market relevant to create careers? Not so much so. And as a result of a lack of education and skills development, they don't have access to jobs or the right to start their own businesses. So when you look at the ecosystem of exclusion, there are about 6 points that are extremely important. Lack of information, lack of counting, there's a lack of mobility. Then we talk about lack of education participation, lack of training for market relevance, and lack of economic opportunities through business startups, or when you look at job opportunities. Now, when you talk about specifically in all of these things, the 3 major areas, as you alluded to, Pollyanna, what we see is, first and foremost, the biggest problem that we face is that people have income volatility, and the social protection, while very well intentioned, has a lot of gaps. The social protection mechanisms in Pakistan are very widespread, but they do not have the economic strength to do a lot of things. So I think first and foremost, the specific problem in the ecosystem of exclusion that we see are income volatility and a lack of social protection programs having the robustness that they need for people. And by that, I'll give you an example. Women with disabilities generally, under our studies and research, when they're working in something as widespread as textile and tailoring, earn 10 times less than men with disabilities or tailors with disabilities who are male. I think that's one of the big challenges that we face. The digital and product inaccessibility is another challenge, and I think, again, Arhum will probably allude to it in a far better and more educated manner. But mobile online banking in ATMs at banks continue to be difficult to access. Sign language tends to be absent. So I think reasonable accommodation seems to be missing as well. And finally, when we talk about women with disabilities, there's the double whammy. There's the gender norm because of the culture, as well as the disability. They can't leave their home sometimes. They don't have access to phones or their own identity. And as a result of this, anything that is mainstream and floated by financial institutions as an incentive for women, entrepreneurs or job seekers, tends to miss women with disabilities. So ecosystem of exclusion on 6 points. And then when we focus on 3 specific areas, it's the lack of social protection, lack of digital and product accessibility, and women with disabilities having a double whammy. I think these are the 3 basic areas, the major areas that our studies have shown that people with disabilities face challenge and have lack of financial accessibility.
Thank you, Omair. That's incredibly clear. And what you've managed to do just then is describe, the diversity of complex barriers and challenges, but also kind of shed light on how much it will take to overcome these and financially and economically include persons with disabilities in Pakistan, and specifically women as well. And there have been some phenomenal efforts in Pakistan to overcome these challenges, ranging from regulation. So the Financial Services Regulator of Pakistan putting in specific policy on the financial inclusion of people with disabilities and women, but also from organisations such as yours. So how would you describe, this diversity of stakeholders, industries, organisations, including NOWPDP, and how you've convened and partnered to break down some of these barriers?
Yeah, so I think that's another very, very important point. When we look at the number of things that have happened in the past, as we were talking about earlier before this live broadcast started, this has been the decade of growth and decade of recognition for persons with disabilities in Pakistan. And we have seen exponential rise in terms of well-intentioned organizations and well-intentioned corporate and private sector organizations, as well as the government sector being partaking. So when we go back 17 years, Pollyanna, I think one of the big challenges when NOWPDP was established, we went across the nation. We went across Pakistan and went to all the provincial capitals and other cities and, understood what the need is. The need assessment was absolutely crucial to understand what challenges are faced by persons with disabilities. Based on those needs assessment, we created a coalition of 180 plus organizations across Pakistan that were working on disabilities, DPOs, NGOs that we felt could contribute towards the advancement of those rights of persons with disabilities. So between 2007 and 8, we created the Journey of Hope, as we call it, understanding the needs. 2008, 2018, we collaborated with a lot of these organizations on the private sector as well as the non-profit sector to actually create a coalition of need. And based on that learning, we started to create a legal framework with the government of Pakistan, the government of the provinces as well, where passage of provincial and federal laws happened in 2018. As well as the State Bank of Pakistan, which finally passed the regulation, which we were instrumental in along with our partners in authoring so that they could have an instrument. So we did the needs assessment in 2007, 2008 to 2018, we created a network of organizations. 18 to 21, we made sure that laws were enshrined. And then to scale it, the implementation of laws happened through the facility that you visited, the Center of, sort of financial excellence and inclusion. We sustained it by embedding it through sector-specific partnerships, and then we made it visible through international partnerships. So if I have to give you an entire collection of the partnerships that we have generated, including Connect Here, which has been very visible and very, very impactful, has been first needs assessment, then creating a coalition, and then ensuring a legal framework, and then embedding this and sustaining this and making it visible through centers of excellence, through other partnerships, corporate partnerships, and finally, by getting recognition at international platforms like the Zero Project, the GDI Hub, and other institutions as well. So the regulators have to be appreciated, the social protection programs have to be appreciated, the government has to be appreciated, the financial institutions, various industries, but mostly I feel persons with disabilities and the organizations that are working like our partners that have been instrumental in ensuring that this array of people came together on a singular platform and ensured the passage of laws and the sustaining, scaling, and making visible of these changes.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And you know what? Reflecting, when I first saw and learned of, I think it was back in 2021, the new regulation on the financial inclusion of persons with disabilities of the regulator, you think, wow, this is an incredible achievement to actually have a sector regulator actually requiring organizations to meet certain accessibility provisions and inclusion provisions on their products and services. This is amazing. And what you've just shared to me is that this process has been ongoing and informed by persons with disabilities since 2007. And this type of thing has generated off the back of years and years of partnerships and advocacy, and, others to learn from this approach and use this methodology is really, really invaluable. I'm turning to you now, and would love to hear a little bit more about, some of these challenges that the innovative solutions of Connect Here work to address in Pakistan, and how have you done this? So yeah, over to you. Talk to us a bit more about Connect Here's work.
Thank you. I first want to really appreciate the picture Omair has painted, which really covers all of the aspects of where we have been as a nation, where we are currently. In terms of Connect Here, one of the things that sort of was a privilege for us was the fact that where we were starting didn't necessarily require a lot of innovation or sort of technical work on our end. With things as basic as a virtual interpretation service, like a video relay service. Everyone in Pakistan already has access to WhatsApp. Everyone in Pakistan already has a network connection and smartphone accessibility. Our goal was to only tailor an experience towards a specific community. And that allowed us to really solve a problem in a way that a lot of developed nations have been doing for a very long time, but nobody had focused on it in Pakistan. So even my co-founder, the perspective of why we needed to solve this came from a very personal place. So Azima, who's my co-founder, her parents and a lot of her relatives a generation above are deaf. So when she grew up in that household, and I've very intimately known that household for the last 10, 12, 15 years, we saw how very little things like even going grocery shopping, let alone going for a job interview or getting a bank account opened or activating an ATM card were really difficult for deaf individuals only by the purpose of a difference in language communication. So when we started off, we realized that all we could start off with was building out the awareness. And even before our application, we utilized social media, which was again also something a lot of us had access to. So we started with awareness. We realized there was a need for a solution that allowed deaf individuals and hearing individuals who wanted to communicate with the deaf community a way to connect to a sign language interpreter. Then we were able to create an experience that allows anyone with an internet connected device to connect to a sign language interpreter in just about a minute. And that is where we feel was the true innovation in focusing on building technology that was for the deaf community by the deaf community. When we were building out, we realized Azima's parents were the first people that we constantly would go to and ask questions about. Is a certain experience more intuitive? Is the button placement correct? Is it a lot of words on the screen that confuse you? And slowly and steadily, when we brought in more deaf individuals, we realized that we were building for a wide spectrum of people that were either not technically literate or not academically literate or both. So the experience had to be for someone so simple that even if they hadn't used a smartphone before, or if they couldn't read, they should be able to utilize the Connect Here application. So I feel that's where the true innovation came in, when we brought in the opinions of the people we were building the solution for. And with that, we were now able to scale it to about 50,000 individuals, about 150 to 200 of which use it on a regular daily basis. And they're using it to solve not just like big problems of finding employment opportunities or going to the doctors, but even in communicating with their family members. And we've seen that slowly and steadily with the growing awareness, everyone really now wants to play a part in making the change that they have always wanted to see. So at first, Connect Here's team members only often used to be those that came from a background that had deaf family members or deaf parents or deaf siblings. Now we have people that have no association with the deaf community whatsoever, wanting to play their part to take our work even further. And all in all, that has been sort of a really exciting journey for us.
Thank you, Ahmad. And I had the privilege of visiting your office in Karachi earlier last year, and it's really amazing to see of the technologies that you are developing. I can see a question on the chat about the use of AI, and a little bit later, if we have time, it would be great to kind of hear of your innovations in that space. I have one follow-up for you actually, on kind of whether you'd be able to kind of describe the kind of what works for technologies for accessible banking services, and kind of how have you managed to forge, quite a large array of partnerships with the banking sector for the purpose of financial inclusion?
Absolutely. I think this also touches upon Omair's point of the sort of lobbying and advocacy work that they've done even before we were in the space, and now particularly focusing on the financial sector. What we've seen is that the State Bank of Pakistan mandates a really effective sort of framework for disability inclusion, and particularly the Connected application came about because we had a deaf person reach out to us, telling us about how for 2 years he wasn't able to get an ATM card, access to his own money. So, and then slowly and steadily with that particular case, we talked to the branch manager, we interpreted the call over video calls, and slowly and steadily we were able to bring to attention to the financial institution regarding the gaps that have existed, because initially there was a focus on physical disabilities only, so ensuring ramps, ensuring tactile flooring, but sign language interpretation was something that was often missing in these cases. And for us, slowly and steadily, we realized it was also about building a seamless enough experience for the financial institutions that would take care of all of the legalities, the compliances, the security, and the privacy aspects to ensure that the experience they are providing to a deaf individual comes with the same safety, security, and guarantees that a hearing person expects from a bank as well. So it wasn't only certainly a gap of banks not being inclusive, but it was also a gap that we had to fulfill of ensuring technological and security and privacy concerns as well. And only then were we able to see a slow growing movement across the whole financial sector of ensuring financial and overall sign language accessibility, not just in the model branches, but also in the workforce as well. So now these banks and financial institutions don't only focus on ensuring accessibility for their deaf customers, but now they also focus on the deaf employee aspect as well. And that's been really exciting to see evolve as well.
Thank you so much. And, when I work with a few banks in Pakistan, and what's been amazing and why I think that, the ecosystem of work that both of you are doing and the banks are doing and the regulators and OPDs is that a lot of you know each other across the industries. So, for example, I will be speaking with someone who works in HR in a bank in, a city in the south, and they'll say, have you met Connect here? Have you met Azima and Arhum? Have you met Special Talent Exchange Program, who are an OPD based in Islamabad? We engage with NOWPDP, another bank that I work with, we've done a partnership with NOWPDP, you all know each other. And in terms of that cross-sector relationship, driving towards a singular mission, it's really, really, tangible across, for example, Karachi in the south, where, the whole sector driven by organizations such as yourselves and the regulation are actually collaborating in a productive way for financial inclusion and economic empowerment of persons with disabilities. And so I want to kind of come back to you, Omair, kind of bridging from that and that, real sense of partnership across the work that you do, and talk a bit more about NOWPDP's roles. So why have you been sort of successful? Why and what opportunities are you most looking forward to leverage in terms of the economic empowerment and financial inclusion of persons with disabilities?
Right. Thank you, I think, for that overview as well. I think it's very, very interesting to see that, when we started our journey, and I think I just go back to when I joined NOWPDP in 2012 and 13, I think we were looking at a landscape where the biggest private sector organization, the corporates, the banking sector, the textile industry, had absolutely no notion of disability inclusion. And I think that was one of the big challenges that we faced, was how can we get the word out there? And the word out there in a manner which is not charitable, in a manner which is not like, for lack of a better term, black and white music playing in the back and sad music playing in the back, and so on and so forth, and to make it in an empowerment-based model. And I think that's where our biggest challenge came in. And I think you need champions. I think you need champion institutions, you need champion individuals who are not part of the nonprofit sector or part of the corporate sector who take on the mantle to make this change. And then once a model of excellence is created, how can that be emulated and replicated by the government, which in most cases very openly says they have the resources, but they do not have the wherewithal, the knowledge, and the people to deliver on the things that they desire. So I think one of the biggest successes for us was finding that one Pied Piper, if you will, for lack of a better term, where you find this one blue chip company that takes on the mantle. And I think we were lucky and fortunate enough that very early on in our journey, we had one of the largest conglomerates in Pakistan, which is very well recognized, come on board as a partner who wanted to implement their sort of corporate mandate through us. And once other organizations saw that, they became more and more inclined towards it. And additionally, finding champions at the very top. Finding champions at the very top is very, very important. So leaders who take ownership in their institution, in the corporate sector, as well as the government. We've been fortunate in the province of Sindh, where Karachi is located, that the chief executive of the province, as well as the bureaucratic head of the province, are very, very driven by what disability means to them, because of personal reasons. So I think these are things that were the initial sort of gateways for us. And once you have created this Pied Piper / champion model, then it becomes very easy to replicate and go knock on the doors of the highest offices of the country and make sure that they're inclined towards your message. And then we need young, aspiring individuals who join the cause and feel like this is a viable career to have as well. I think that's a very, very important thing. Scalability and sustainability is not only hinging on money, it's hinging on talent. If the right people with the right intentions join the cause, it can go a long way in convincing the high stakeholders that this is an important topic to take up.
Thank you so much. And both of your organizations have, it's almost through every pillar of work that you do is an equal measure of making sure the sort of skills and employment and future-proofing the environment for people with disabilities themselves. So, it's about ensuring you are employing persons with disabilities, for example, Connect Here and employing deaf persons in the work that you do, and as well the vocational training of NOWPDP as well, and actually working with banks to make sure their systems and structures and processes and cultures are ready to, hire people with disabilities within. And the NOWPDP's Centre for Financial Inclusion, has a specific focus on things such as financial literacy, but also what are the types of skills for people with disabilities that enter the banking industry, and trying to equip people through that kind of talent pipeline approach. Across all the work that you do, we've got 3 minutes left, and I can't tell you how much we could continue to converse on things that I haven't mentioned across them. But what I will ask the both of you today is a kind of final question to sort of summarize. So Ahmad, please let me know what's needed for a future of disability innovation for financial resilience in Pakistan.
Absolutely. I think beyond this sort of responsibility we have demanded of financial institutions and regulators, I think now we're sort of at a point where we would really do a lot of benefit if at an individual level we also take the responsibility of noticing where any sort of lapse or lack in accessibility exists, and even calling those things out or pointing some sort of attention to it. I think that's what's definitely needed. We at Connect Here often talk about, putting your disability lens on, and that sort of focus and perspective really helps make sure that at even getting something out to a systematic level, it requires a grassroots effort, a grassroots movement. So I think a request from everyone hearing this and anybody that will go on to hear this once this is posted as well, is focusing on how we can sort of bring more attention to areas where we do see a lack of disability inclusion, particularly in financial matters as well.
Thank you so much. I agree with that call to action. Omair, over to you.
I think Arhum pretty much hit the nail on the head, but if I have to sort of add on to that, I think one of the focus areas that we're working on is making sure that more and more advocacy gets out and research. I think one of the big challenges that you face in Pakistan is a lack of verified research. And one of the things that we're pivoting towards is using data to come up with research that is going to effectively contribute to future generations and the future actually understanding the disability lens in a much, much better way. So for us, those are two very important points: advocating, continuing to advocate, because still we very much remain on the periphery of actual inclusion, and then making sure that research backs up what our gut tells us. And I think that will make sure that globally, more and more cases like Pakistan, where I think disability is truly making waves, will be recognized. So I think advocacy and research are the two areas that we strongly feel we need to work on.
Omair, that is beautifully described, and I wish there was the Findex for the financial inclusion of persons with disabilities. Having research that backs up what our gut tells us, and also what speaking with people on the ground tells us, would really, really help a future cause, and hopefully the future financial inclusion of more people with disabilities across Pakistan. Thank you so much. Please, everyone listening today, do look up the amazing work of Omair and NOWPDP, Ahmad and Azima at Connect Here. It's incredible, and I can't wait to see what's next. And it's been a privilege to host you today. So thank you all. And on a final note, thank you, Samuel, who has been an amazing sign language interpreter for us today. Really appreciate it, and have a lovely day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.